could this woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet and the crown represent? Some have interpreted as the church. This is an image, a symbolic image of the church. Because the church is also described as a woman, right? The bride of Christ. And if he is reigning in heaven, then she is his queen consort. So here we see all of the images of a ruling woman with the glory that is the church. Okay? Now, that has some merit to it, I would have to say. Because if you read in chapter 19, in fact, let's go to Revelation 19. Look at verse 7. Page 218, if you have my Bible. It's towards the end of the book. It says, "Let us rejoice and exult and give him the glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. It was granted her to be clothed with fine linen, pure and bright." Did you see that? So an image somewhat similar to the woman clothed with the sun. And since she is the bride of the Lamb who rules the nations, she is a royal figure herself, the church. All right? So this gives us an indication that the image of the woman clothed with the sun could also be the church. Now, here's some difficulties with both of these interpretations. Okay? There is less difficulty with understanding that Israel is the image that is here, because if you follow the image of the woman clothed with the sun, she is with child, right? She cries out in birth. And she gives birth to whom? A male child. And what does it say? Who will rule the nations with a rod of iron. Verse 5 in chapter 12. Okay? Who is that male child that rules the nations? Jesus. Okay? So we're kind of getting ahead of who are these other characters. The man-child that the woman gives birth to rules the nations with a rod of iron. There's only one person that is. Jesus. That phrase, to rule the nations with a rod of iron, comes from Psalm 2. Turn to Psalm chapter 2. And if you have my Bible or a similar one, you will notice that the title above Psalm 2 says, God's promise to his anointed. And what he's talking about, Psalm 2 is a messianic psalm. What does that mean? It means it's a promise of the Messiah who is to come. Okay? Anointed in Hebrew is Mashiach, where we get the word Messiah. In Greek, it would be Christos, or Christ. It simply means anointed one. Psalm 2, verse 8. Well, let's go to verse 6. I have set my king on Zion. Did you hear that? My holy mountain. I will tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage. Keep reading. To the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with
a rod of iron.
A rod of iron. The king, the anointed one, the ruler of Zion that God will establish, gives him a rod of iron to smash the nations into submitting to him. You get it? And dash them into pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings, be wise. Be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear. With trembling rejoice, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Notice how that psalm connects with Revelation 11 with all the rejoicing in heaven about God is ruling and reigning. You got that? Are you following me here? We're still trying to identify who this woman is. But if we go back to Revelation 12, with the acknowledgement that the son, the child that is birthed from the woman, is the Messiah. Because this is quoting Psalm 2. And by the way, this isn't the only place where this is quoted. If you look at Revelation chapter 2, verse 7, we heard this phrase before. Revelation 2:7, that's not quite right. No, where is it? Oh, I must have made something wrong. Let me see if I can find it. Remember I told you I'll take your lampstand. Is it 27? Yes, thank you. It's Revelation 2:27. The message to the church of Thyatira. Look at verse 26. He who conquers and keeps my word, I will give him power over the nations. He shall rule them with a rod of iron, as when an earthen pots are broken in pieces, even as I myself have received power from my Father, I will give him the morning star. Remember, who's speaking here? Jesus. Who has the rod of iron that he will give to those who overcome? Jesus. You see that? One final message, Revelation 19, verse 15. Actually, look at verse 13. He is by which is called the Word of God. Who is the Word of God? Jesus. He is the Logos. He is the Word made flesh. John chapter 1. And the armies of heaven wearing fine linen, white and pure, followed him on white horses. From his mouth issues a sharp sword, which strikes the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. You see that? It is very clear who has the rod of iron that rules the nations. Jesus. So who is this man-child that is birthed from the woman? Jesus. Now, if I say that the woman that's clothed with the sun is Israel, it is Israel, if you will, that birthed Jesus to the world. It was through Israel, through the Jews, that Jesus came into the world, right? So that is a clear connection that you can see in an image form, in a symbolic manner. The Jews, if you will, as a nation birthed Jesus to us. Right? That's not true of the church. The church didn't birth Jesus. So that's where the understanding that the woman is the church has a problem. Because the church doesn't birth Jesus. Jesus birthed the church. Right? It wouldn't be a church if it weren't for Jesus. You hear me? But Jesus came through the nation of Israel. He was a Jew. So was our Blessed Mother. So you see, by understanding that this image has a greater significance, we can see how this can be applied to Mary, because she literally birthed Jesus into the world, right? There's no question about that. But she was a humble peasant girl. Why all of this sun, moon, stars business? Because it shows her in her glorified state. And that she, if you will, is the image of what Israel should have been. She represents the perfect Jew because she had faith in the God of Abraham. When God sent his angel to her and said, "You're going to birth the Messiah," what did she say? "Let it be done to me according to your word." That's how Israel should have responded to God from the beginning. But they didn't. You see that? So she represents the glory of what Israel should have been. And because of that, she is clothed with all this royalty. Does that make sense? So it represents, this sign represents a real person, and it's symbolic of the nation of Israel as a whole in its best form. Okay? Because of all the imagery that's around it. Okay? Because while Mary was a real person, while Mary personally birthed Jesus, the other stuff that happens to the woman never happened to her. What do you mean? We'll keep reading. Verse 7. War rose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they were defeated. There was no longer any place for them. Okay, I'm kind of jumping down. The devil is sent to the earth, right? And it describes how the devil is enraged because he lost his place in heaven. Now, read verse 13. When the dragon saw that he had been thrown to the earth, he pursued the woman who gave birth to the child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to a place where she is to be nurtured for a time, times, and a half time. Did you hear that? That never happened to Mary in a literal sense. And by the way, this is more applicable to the church than it is to Israel at this point. Why? Because it's describing the state of the woman. If we assume it's the church, she is protected by God to go into the wilderness for a time, times, and a half time. How much is that? Right. A time, times, and a half time. That's a total of 3 years. 3.5 years. Which is how long the 2 men prophesy, right? How long the beast will reign on the earth. So everything is revolving around this 3.5-year period. All right? This woman is thrown into the wilderness to be protected by God for a time, times, and a half time. That's more indicative of what the church will go through. This great final testing, okay? In a symbolic manner. Now watch. Verse 15, the serpent poured water like a river out of its mouth after the woman, to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to help, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river. You can just imagine this on the screen, can't you? I mean, it's like something out of Dungeons and Dragons, you know? A woman given wings, the dragon spewing forth water, trying to knock her out of the air, the